There's something different about people who grew up in the 1960s. You can see it when things go wrong, when life gets messy, when plans collapse, when everyone else is panicking. They don't. They don't spiral. They don't fall apart. They don't rush to social media to announce the emotional emergency. They just deal with it. And it's not because they're cold or emotionally distant. It's because their childhood quietly rewired their brains in ways we're only now beginning to understand. By the end of this video, you'll see why growing up in the 1960s created some of the most psychologically resilient and quietly complex people alive today. Let's start with something most people never think about. Imagine being 6 years old. You're sitting in class, feet barely touching the floor, crayons still staining your fingers. Suddenly, the teacher blows a whistle. Duck and cover. You crawl into your desk, curl into a ball, hands over your head. You don't fully understand nuclear war, but you understand enough. You know there are weapons out there that could erase everything. You know the adults look nervous when they talk about it. And deep down, you know that desk probably wouldn't save you from anything real. Here's the strange part. This didn't create a generation frozen in fear. It created people who learned something very unusual very early. The world might end tomorrow, and you still have homework due tonight. That's not denial. That's psychological flexibility. Without realizing it, 1960s kids learned how to hold two opposite truths at the same time. Danger exists, and life goes on. So when they grew up, everyday problems felt smaller. Lose a job? Terrible, but not the apocalypse. Relationship trouble? Painful, but the planet is still spinning. They developed an instinct most people struggle to learn even now. Don't waste energy worrying about what you can't control. Not because a therapist told them, but because they practiced it as children. Now let's jump to a Sunday night in February 1964. The whole family is crowded around the TV. And suddenly, 4 guys from Liverpool appear on the Ed Sullivan Show. The audience is screaming. Your parents look confused. Your older sibling is losing their mind. And you're watching something shift, even if you don't have words for it yet. The Beatles weren't just a band. They were proof that the world could change overnight, that culture wasn't fixed, that authority could be challenged, that what adults said was the way things are could suddenly become outdated. This taught 1960s kids something powerful. Change doesn't always happen slowly. Sometimes it explodes. But then, almost immediately, came the darker lessons. Assassinations, JFK, Martin Luther King Jr., Robert Kennedy. Hope followed by shock. Belief followed by grief. They learned early that progress isn't smooth, that good people can lose, that history doesn't promise happy endings. This combination created a rare mindset. They believe change is possible, but they're not naive. They hope, but they don't expect guarantees. That's not pessimism. That's earned wisdom. Now let's talk about something quieter. Picture being 8 years old and walking to the corner store alone. No phone, no tracking app, just a few coins in your pocket and a mission. You count the money carefully. You choose wisely, because once it's gone, it's gone. This wasn't a lesson about budgeting. It was a physical experience of cause and effect. Spend it now or save it for later. And that understanding stuck. It built patience, impulse control, future thinking, not from lectures, but from real life. The independence didn't stop there. Kids walked to school alone, solved problems without adults stepping in, got lost and figured it out. Their brains were being trained every day to assess risk, read environments, and trust themselves. And yes, they got hurt. They fell, they scraped knees, they burned fingers, they cried. And most of the time, the response was simple. You're okay, you'll live. No dramatic intervention, no emergency mindset. They learned a crucial distinction early. Pain is uncomfortable, but it isn't always dangerous. So as adults, they don't panic at discomfort. They don't interpret every hardship as trauma. They know they can survive it because they always have. They were also trusted with real tools, actual hammers, sewing machines, things that could hurt you if you weren't careful. And that was the lesson. Be careful. Pay attention. Learn how things work. This created adults who aren't intimidated by complexity, who assume problems can be figured out, who don't freeze the moment something breaks. Now let's talk about waiting. Real waiting. You wanted to see a movie? You waited. Missed it? Too bad. You wanted to hear your favorite song? You sat by the radio hoping. And when it finally played, it mattered. Anticipation was part of the experience. This taught patience in a way modern life rarely does. They know good things take time, that boredom isn't dangerous, that silence isn't empty. Speaking of boredom, when TV ended for the day, that was it. No endless scroll, no autoplay, no algorithm. So kids went outside. They invented games. They got bored and then creative. Modern neuroscience now confirms something 1960s kids lived daily. Boredom fuels imagination. That's why so many of them are comfortable alone with their thoughts, why silence doesn't scare them, why stillness feels natural. They practiced it for years. They also learned how to handle disappointment. Lose a game? You lost. Fail a test? That's on you. No participation trophies, no emotional cushioning. And guess what happened? They survived it. They learned failure isn't fatal. Embarrassment fades. Life goes on. That built frustration tolerance, the ability to keep going when things don't go your way. And finally, July 20th, 1969. A human being steps on the moon. Think about what that does to a child's mind. Everything adults said was impossible suddenly wasn't. If we can do that, what else might be possible? That belief never fully left them, even after Vietnam footage, even after broken trust in authority, even after seeing how dark the world could be. They learned to hold two truths at once. The world is flawed, and improvement is possible. Hope is necessary, but never guaranteed. That balance might be their greatest strength. People who grew up in the 1960s are living proof that resilience isn't something you're born with. It's something you build through freedom, responsibility, boredom, failure, and trust. Not a perfect system, not a painless one, but one that created people who can endure uncertainty without losing themselves. And honestly, in a world that feels more fragile by the day, that psychology might be something we could all learn from.